The neighbor called him crazy for digging up the yard nonstop. But what he found? Raymond Turner wiped the sweat from his brow with the back of his dirt-covered hand as he stared at the hole that had become his obsession for the past 3 months. At 68, his back ached more each day, but something inside him wouldn't let him stop. That's when he heard the familiar voice of Mr. Howard, the neighbor next door, shouting over the wooden fence that divided their properties. "Hey, Raymond, for heaven's sake, you're going to dig all the way to hell at this rate," said the man, shaking his head in disapproval. Raymond didn't answer. He was already used to the comments. For weeks, the neighbors had been whispering behind his back, some laughing, others showing faint concern, but none of them knew what he was really looking for. "The man lost his mind after his wife passed," murmured Mrs. Dorothy from the yellow house. 3 months digging like a dog looking for a bone. "Someone should call his daughter who lives in New York," commented Mr. Leonard from the bakery. "Raymond isn't right in the head." But Raymond heard every whispered word, every pitying glance, every malicious comment, and still he kept going, because he had something none of them had, the letter. The letter he found 3 months ago, hidden inside an old cookie tin in the attic of the house, when he went up to look for the winter clothes of Dorothy, his wife who had passed the year before. The shaky handwriting of his father, William Turner, was still legible after all these years. "My son, if you are reading this, it is because I am no longer here. I know you always thought me a simple man, but I kept something that could save our family when times get hard. Where the sun rises and the shadow of the old jaboticaba tree meets the old well, is buried what can free you from debt. Don't let anyone know. William." Raymond leaned on his shovel, observing the land around him. The jaboticaba tree his father mentioned was no longer there. It had been knocked down by a windstorm 10 years earlier, and the old well had been clogged for decades, covered by a concrete lid he himself had put there for safety. But he calculated. He watched the position of the sun every morning for weeks, imagining where the shadow of the old tree would have fallen, and he began to dig. The first hole yielded nothing. The second one didn't either. Now he was on the 4th hole, each one deeper than the last, and his determination only grew with every shovelful. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. "Mr. Raymond," a woman's voice called from the front gate. He turned and saw Barbara, Mr. Howard's middle daughter, a woman of about 45 who worked as a nurse at the town's health clinic. She had a worried expression on her face. "Barbara, my dear, how are you?" "I'm the one who should ask how you are, Mr. Raymond. My father is worried about you. He says you haven't stopped digging for months. Are you eating properly?" Raymond sighed. Barbara had always been a good woman, different from the others who only knew how to gossip. She genuinely cared about him. "I'm fine, my dear, just tending to the yard. But Mr. Raymond, with all due respect, this doesn't look like yard work. You've dug up the whole property, and my father says you're out here sometimes until dawn." It was true. Raymond barely slept. Ever since he found the letter, a sense of urgency had taken hold of him, as if time were running out for something he couldn't quite define. "Barbara, you know how it is. After Dorothy passed, I need to keep busy. The work helps me not to think. I understand, Mr. Raymond, but—" She hesitated. "Don't you think it would be good to talk to someone? There's a very good psychologist at the health clinic who sees senior citizens." Raymond felt a tightness in his chest. Even Barbara thought he was losing his mind. "Thank you for your concern, my dear, but I'm fine. I just need to finish what I started." Barbara nodded, but he saw the doubt in her eyes. One more person who didn't understand, who couldn't understand. After she left, Raymond returned to the hole. His hands, calloused from years of work at the auto repair shop, ached as he held the shovel. But he continued. The Turner family property was 2,000 square meters, an inheritance from his grandfather, who had bought the land in the 1940s. The wooden house, built by William himself in the 1950s, was still solid, but needed repairs that Raymond didn't have the money for. Ever since he retired from the shop 5 years earlier, money was always tight. His pension barely covered basic expenses, and after Dorothy got sick, The medical bills consumed all their savings. Now, a year after losing his wife, Raymond found himself alone with debts he didn't know how to pay. The health insurance was overdue, the electric bill was late, the property tax was past due, and that's why his father's letter seemed like a blessing, or a curse, depending on how you looked at it. The sun was setting when Raymond heard the sound of a car stopping in front of the house. He stood up slowly, his joints protesting, and went to the gate. A man in a light suit got out of a silver Camry, adjusting his tie as he walked toward the house. It was Stanley Harper, the owner of the town's building supply store, a man in his 50s who always dressed well and talked too loudly. "Good afternoon, Mr. Raymond. How are you?" "Fine, Stanley. What brings you here?" Stanley looked at the holes in the backyard and shook his head with an expression that mixed pity and opportunism. "Look, Mr. Raymond, I'll get straight to the point. I have a proposal that could solve all your problems." "What kind of proposal?" "I want to buy your land. I'll offer $60,000 cash. You could buy a smaller house in town and still have money left to live comfortably." Raymond felt a chill down his spine. $60,000 was less than half what the land was worth, even needing repairs. "I'm not interested in selling, Stanley. Mr. Raymond, with all due respect, you need to think with a clear head. This land is turning into a—" he gestured toward the holes— "a minefield. The neighbors are worried. And frankly, at your age, taking care of a property this size is a big responsibility. I take very good care of my property." Of course. But think about it. $60,000 free and clear of any debt. You could start over in a smaller, more practical place, and I would handle all the paperwork, no hassle for you." Raymond studied Stanley's face. There was something about the man's insistence that bothered him. This was the third time in 2 months he had shown up with purchase offers, each one a little higher than the last, but always far below the real value. "As I said, I'm not interested. Mr. Raymond, can I speak frankly?" Stanley lowered his voice to a conspiratorial tone. "People are talking about you. They say you haven't been well since Mrs. Dorothy passed. Maybe it's time to accept some help." "What kind of help?" "Well, I know an excellent retirement home in Charlotte, a very well-kept place with specialized professionals. With the money from the sale, you could live there with all the comfort and security." Raymond felt anger rise in his chest. A retirement home. That's how they wanted to get rid of him. "Stanley, I'm going to ask you to leave now, you two. And I don't want any more purchase offers." "Mr. Raymond, don't get upset. I'm just trying to help. But think about what I said. The offer stands." After Stanley left, Raymond stood still at the gate, watching the car disappear in the dust of the road. Something wasn't right. Why did that man insist so much on buying specifically his land? The next morning, Raymond woke up before sunrise. His back ached, but he had a renewed energy. He made strong coffee, ate 2 slices of bread with margarine, and went to the backyard. The current hole was almost 2 meters deep. He had dug methodically, creating steps on the sides so he could descend and continue the work. The red soil of the region made the work difficult, especially after the rains from the previous week. While digging, Raymond thought about his life. 50 years married to Dorothy, 2 children raised, a life of honest work at the auto repair shop downtown. He was never rich, but he always managed to support his family with dignity. Now at 68 years old, he found himself alone for the first time in his adult life. The children lived far away, James in Houston, working for an oil company, and Catherine in New York, a nurse at a private hospital. Both had their own families and responsibilities. Raymond didn't want to bother his children with his financial problems. They had already helped a lot during Dorothy's illness, and he knew it wasn't fair to keep asking for help. That's why his father's letter represented more than money. It represented independence, the possibility of solving his problems without needing to be a burden to anyone. At 10 in the morning, when the sun was already strong, Raymond stopped to rest. He sat on the edge of the hole, drinking water from a thermos, when he heard voices coming from the street. Poor Mr. Raymond. 3 months digging like crazy. Someone should do something. This isn't normal. My sister said she saw him digging in the middle of the night with a flashlight. Do you think there's something wrong with his head? Raymond sighed. The comments were always the same. No one tried to talk to him directly to understand what was happening. It was easier for them to gossip and draw their own conclusions. He was about to go back to work when he saw a young woman approaching the gate. It was Rachel, 19 years old, Mrs. Dorothy's daughter. A studious young woman pursuing an education degree at the college in the neighboring town. "Good morning, Mr. Raymond. Can I talk to you?" "Of course, my dear. Come in." Rachel entered the property and looked around, observing the various holes in different stages of excavation. "Mr. Raymond, my mother sent me here to see how you're doing. She's worried." "Your mother is a good person, Rachel. Tell her I'm fine." "But are you really fine?" "Sorry for the direct question, but everyone is commenting about—" She pointed to the holes. "About this." Raymond looked at the young woman. Rachel had always been different from the others. More respectful, more careful with her words. Maybe she could understand. "Rachel, can I trust you?" "Of course, Mr. Raymond." "If I tell you something, do you promise not to go around talking about it?" "I promise." Raymond hesitated for a moment. Since he found the letter, he hadn't shared the secret with anyone. But the weight of carrying it all alone was becoming unbearable. "I found a letter from my father, written before he left. He hid something buried here on the property. Something that could solve my financial problems." Rachel listened in silence, showing no skepticism or judgment. "And you believe that letter is true?" "My father was an honest man, Rachel. He would never lie about something like that. And besides," Raymond looked around, making sure no one else was listening, "there's something strange happening. Stanley Harper showed up here 3 times trying to buy the land for a very low price. Why would anyone be so interested?" Rachel reflected on his words. "It's true, it is strange. My mother mentioned that he was asking about you around the neighborhood, wanting to know about your financial situation, if you had family nearby." "He did that?" "Yes, he did. And he wasn't discreet. My mother was bothered by the questions. This information left Raymond even more intrigued. Why would Stanley be investigating his personal life before making a purchase offer?" "Rachel, can you do me a favor?" "Of course. Can you keep an eye out if he shows up around here again? Without seeming like you're watching, just observe." "Yes, I can. And Mr. Raymond, if you need help with the digging, I can ask my cousin Nathan to come here. He's strong and works in construction." Raymond felt a pang of emotion. It had been a long time since someone offered genuine help without ulterior motives. "Thank you very much, my dear. But I need to do this alone." "Why?" "Because if there really is something buried here, I don't want anyone else to know until I discover exactly what it is." Rachel nodded, understanding the logic. "I understand, but if you change your mind, just let me know." After Rachel left, Raymond felt a little less alone. Having someone who at least didn't consider him crazy was already a relief. The work continued over the following days. Raymond had developed a system. He dug during the mornings, when the sun wasn't so strong, rested during the hottest hours, and returned to work in the late afternoon. On Thursday of the following week, while digging, Raymond heard the sound of a car stopping in front of the house. This time it was a blue Accord he didn't recognize. A woman of about 40 got out of the car and walked toward the gate. She wore business clothes and carried a leather briefcase. "Mr. Raymond Turner?" "Yes, that's me." "My name is Susan Bailey. I'm a social worker from City Hall. We've received some calls from people concerned about your situation." Raymond felt his stomach tighten. Social worker? That couldn't mean anything good. What kind of concerns? "Well, we've been told that you've been digging on the property for months without an apparent purpose. Some neighbors are concerned about your mental stability. I'm renovating my backyard. Is that a crime?" "Of course not, Mr. Turner. But I would like to talk with you, just to understand the situation and see if we need to offer any kind of support." Raymond invited her into the house. The living room was simple but clean and organized. Susan looked around, observing everything with professional eyes. "Do you live alone?" "Since my wife passed, yes." "Do you have children?" "2, but they live far away and have their own families." "I see. And about the digging in the backyard, could you explain what the objective is?" Raymond hesitated. He couldn't talk about the letter without seeming delusional. "I'm looking for the best spot to dig an artesian well. The water bill is expensive, and I thought it would be a good way to save." "I see, but wouldn't it be more efficient to hire a specialized company for that?" "I don't have the money to hire a company. I'm doing it with my own means." Susan wrote something down on her notepad. "Mr. Turner, may I ask about your financial situation?" "It's tough. The retirement pension doesn't cover much, especially after my wife's medical expenses." "Do you have debts?" The question made Raymond uncomfortable, but he decided to be honest. "Some, but I'm managing." "What kind of debts? Health insurance overdue, electric bill, property tax? Nothing I can't resolve." Susan continued writing. "Mr. Turner, there is a City Hall program that can help seniors with financial difficulties. Would you be interested in learning about it?" "What kind of program?" "Assistance with paying basic bills, psychological support, and in more serious cases, referral to specialized residences where you would have full care." There it was again. Specialized residences. Everyone wanted to get rid of him. "I'm not interested in leaving my home." "I understand, but I'd like you to know that options exist, and it would also be good if you considered talking to a psychologist. Sometimes, after significant losses like that of a spouse, some people develop compulsive behaviors." "Compulsive behaviors? Like obsessively digging in search of something that may not exist?" Raymond felt the irritation grow but controlled himself. "Susan, with all due respect, I'm just taking care of my property. I don't see anything abnormal in that." "Of course, I'm just leaving the guidance, and I'll leave my card in case you change your mind about the assistance programs." After she left, Raymond was disturbed. The visits were becoming more frequent and more invasive. First Stanley trying to buy the land, now the social worker investigating his life. Someone was orchestrating a campaign to get him out of the house, and he needed to find out who and why. That night, Raymond could barely sleep. He stayed on the back porch, watching the yard in the moonlight. The holes looked like dark craters in the familiar landscape he'd known since childhood. Maybe everyone was right. Maybe he really was losing his sanity, digging for a treasure that existed only in the imagination of a desperate man. But just as he was about to give up, he remembered the words his father wrote in the letter, "Don't let anyone know." His father knew there would be people interested in what was buried, and perhaps those people were still around, waiting for an opportunity. On Friday morning, Raymond woke up determined. If there was something on the land, he would find it. And if there wasn't, at least he'd know he tried everything. He had been digging for about an hour when he heard voices coming from the fence dividing his property from Mr. Howard's house. "Dad, you can't let this go on," said a female voice he recognized as Barbara's. "Daughter, the man isn't harming anyone," Howard replied. "But Dad, just look at this. He's dug up the entire yard. That's not normal. What if he gets hurt? What if he falls into one of the holes?" "Barbara is right," said a third voice, male. "Someone needs to take action before something worse happens." Raymond recognized the voice as James's, Barbara's younger brother, who worked as a bus driver. "Do you think I should call his daughter?" asked Howard. "I think so," Barbara replied. "Catherine needs to know what's going on." Raymond felt his heart race. If they called Catherine, she would come from New York and certainly force him to stop the digging. Or worse, she might agree to have him placed somewhere. He needed to find what he was looking for before that happened. For the rest of the day, Raymond worked with renewed urgency. He dug deeper into the current hole, removing bucket after bucket of red earth. In the late afternoon, as he prepared to stop work for the day, his shovel hit something solid. It wasn't a rock, it made a different sound, more hollow. With his heart pounding, Raymond knelt and began removing the earth with his hands. Gradually, he revealed what looked like a wooden surface. It was an old plank, but still firm, measuring approximately 3 feet by 1.5 feet. There was something buried there, exactly where his father indicated in the letter. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing, Raymond worked until sunset to completely remove the earth around the wooden plank. His hands trembled with emotion and anxiety. After 3 months of fruitless digging, he had finally found something. The board was nailed with rusty nails to a structure that appeared to be a box or compartment. Raymond climbed out of the hole to get proper tools, a hammer and a small pry bar he used in the auto repair shop. Returning to the bottom of the hole, he worked carefully to remove the board without damaging what might be inside. The old nails gave way with some effort, and finally the board came loose. Underneath was a wooden box, darkened by years of dampness, but still intact. Raymond lifted it carefully. It was heavy, certainly containing something inside. He climbed out of the hole carrying the box and took it into the house. He placed it on the kitchen table and stared at it for several minutes, hardly believing he had finally found what he was looking for. The box was approximately 50 centimeters long by 30 wide and 20 high. The wood was stained, but the metal hinges still worked. There was a small lock, but the key was not there. Carefully, Raymond forced the lock with a small screwdriver. It opened with a soft click. Inside the box, he found several items wrapped in oily cloths that had protected the contents from moisture. His hands shook as he unwrapped the first item. It was an envelope sealed with wax, still intact after so many years. On the envelope, written in his father's handwriting, was, "For my son Raymond, when times get tough." Inside the envelope was another letter, longer than the first, and with it a hand-drawn map showing the family property, with several points marked with an X. The letter said, "My dear son, if you are reading this, it means you have found my first hiding place, but this is only the beginning. For years I have kept the most important things of our family here, not just money, but documents, your mother's jewelry, and evidence of dealings that may be worth far more than you imagine. Our family's land is worth much more than it seems. Your grandfather, my father, bought this land knowing there was gold underground. Not a lot, but enough for some people to be interested. That's why I always kept the true value of the property a secret. On the map accompanying this letter, I have marked all the places where I have hidden things over the years. Some are material riches. Others are documents that prove our rights to neighboring lands that were taken from the family through trickery. Be careful, my son. There are people who know about the secrets of this property and will do anything to take it from you. Do not trust anyone who offers to buy the land for a low price. And when you find everything, seek a trustworthy lawyer to handle the documents. Your mother is buried in the city cemetery, but her heart has always been in this land. Protect our inheritance as she protected our family. With love and care, your father, William Turner." Raymond read the letter 3 times before he could fully process what was written. His father had hidden far more than he had imagined, and most importantly, there were other people who knew about the secrets of the land. That explained Stanley Harper's insistence on buying the property. He knew something. Raymond returned to the box and unwrapped the other items. He found a small leather pouch containing old gold coins, several pieces of jewelry he recognized as his mother's, yellowed property documents with age, and a second small key. But what impressed him most was a document dated 1952, signed by several people, including the mayor of the time. It was a concession contract that gave the Turner family the right to mine minerals on a 20-hectare plot of land, which included not only their current property, but several others in the area. If this document was valid, it meant his family had rights over a much larger area than just their 2,000 square meters. Raymond studied the map drawn by his father. There were 8 points marked with X scattered across the property. He had found only one of them. There were still 7 hiding spots left to discover, but now he understood why there was so much pressure for him to sell the land, and why a social worker had appeared to investigate him. Someone knew about the family's secrets and was trying to force him out before he discovered everything. That night, Raymond couldn't sleep a wink. He stored the box and all the documents in a safe place and kept planning his next steps. First, he needed to find the other hiding spots marked on the map. Second, he needed to better understand the legal value of the documents he found. And third, he needed to find out exactly who else knew about the secrets of the land. The next morning, a Saturday, Raymond began work on a new point marked on the map. This one was near the back fence, under what was now a flower bed that Dorothy had planted years before. Taking care not to completely destroy the plants, he began to dig. The work was more delicate here, as the soil was more compacted and there were flower roots to work around. Around 9 in the morning, while digging, Raymond saw Rachel approaching from the side gate. "Good morning, Mr. Raymond. How's the work going?" "Good morning, dear. It's going well." Rachel looked at the new hole and then at the man. "Mr. Raymond, can I ask a question?" "Of course. Last night I saw movement at your house very late. Was everything all right?" Raymond hesitated. Rachel had promised secrecy, but could he trust her completely? "I found something, Rachel." "Did you find what you were looking for?" "Part of it, yes. And I discovered there's much more than I imagined." Rachel stepped down into the hole and moved closer to him. "Can you tell me?" Raymond looked around, making sure no one else was nearby. "I found documents that prove my family has rights over a much larger area than just this land. And I found evidence that there are people who know about this and want to get me out of here before I discover everything." "What kind of evidence?" "Stanley Harper isn't trying to buy my land by chance. He knows something. And I bet he's the one who sent the social worker here." Rachel reflected on this information. "Mr. Raymond, this could be dangerous. If there really are people interested in hiding something, they might not like knowing you've discovered it. That's why I need to work fast, find everything before they try to stop me. Are you sure you want to continue alone? I can call my cousin Nathan to help." Raymond looked at Rachel. The young woman had shown loyalty and discretion so far. Perhaps it was time to accept help. "Do you trust your cousin?" "I do. He's a good person and knows how to keep secrets." "All right then, you can call him. But first he needs to promise he won't say anything to anyone." "He will promise. Nathan is like that, a man of his word." Rachel left to fetch her cousin, and Raymond continued digging alone. Half an hour later, she returned accompanied by a strong, dark-haired young man, about 25 years old, wearing work clothes. "Mr. Raymond, this is my cousin Nathan." Nathan greeted the older man with respect. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Raymond. Rachel told me you need help with some digging." "I do, Nathan. But before we start, can you promise me that everything you see or hear here will stay just between us?" "I promise, sir. I'm a man of my word." Raymond studied the young man's face. There was honesty there, and a calmness that made him feel confident. "All right then, I'll explain the situation." Raymond told Nathan the story of the letter, the documents found, and the pressure he had been under to sell the land. The young man listened to everything in silence, without showing skepticism. "I understand, Mr. Raymond. And where do we need to dig now?" "Right here where I was working. According to the map, there should be something buried about 1.5 meters deep." Nathan picked up a second shovel that Raymond had and began to work. The young man was strong and experienced in heavy labor, and in a short time they had significantly deepened the excavation. Around noon, Nathan's shovel hit something solid. "Mr. Raymond, there's something here." They carefully removed the dirt and discovered another compartment, this one made of bricks and cement, more elaborate than the first. "This was built to last a long time," Nathan commented, examining the structure. "My father was a bricklayer before he had the auto repair shop," Raymond explained. "He knew how to build things well." They removed the cement lid and revealed the inside of the compartment. This time there were 2 boxes, both larger than the first. "Let's take them inside the house," Nathan suggested. "Out here in the yard someone might see us." They carried the boxes to the kitchen and placed them on the table next to the first one. Raymond opened the first new box. This time he found mainly documents, old deeds, purchase and sale contracts, payment receipts, and several black and white photographs showing the region in past decades. But there was also a more recent document, dated 1978, that made Raymond stop breathing for a moment. It was an official geological report, signed by a mining engineer, confirming the presence of commercially viable quantities of gold in the region's subsoil. The report recommended immediate exploration and estimated the value of the deposits at an amount that, adjusted for today, would represent millions of dollars. "Nathan, look at this," said Raymond, showing the report. Nathan read the document carefully. "Mr. Raymond, this is a lot of money, a whole lot. That's why they want to get me out of here." They opened the second box and found more surprises. small gold bars that appeared to have been extracted on the property itself, valuable jewelry, and a considerable amount of money from different eras, including bills that were no longer in circulation. But what impressed Raymond the most was finding a photo of his father with 4 other men, all wearing work clothes, in front of what looked like a small mine entrance. On the back of the photo was written, "Partners of the St. Peter Mine, 1975. "Your father had partners in the gold mining," Nathan observed. "Apparently so. And that might explain a lot." Raymond examined the faces in the photograph. One of them he recognized. It was a younger man, but with features that strongly resembled Stanley Harper. "Rachel, did you know Stanley Harper's father?" "I did, Mr. Raymond. He passed away about 10 years ago." "Why do you ask?" "What was his name?" "Manuel Harper. He had a small construction company." Raymond showed the photo to Rachel and Nathan. "Does this man here look like Stanley?" Rachel studied the photo. "Wow, he really does. That must be his father." Now everything made sense. Stanley knew about the gold mine because his father had been a partner of William Turner in the mining operation, and he probably knew there was more gold on the property that was never extracted. "Nathan, I need to find the other points marked on the map as soon as possible," said Raymond. "If Stanley really knows about the mine, he might try other ways to get me out of here." "What other ways?" "I don't know. But ambitious people can get very creative when there's a lot of money involved." They spent the rest of Saturday and all of Sunday excavating the remaining points marked on the map. Nathan was tireless, and with his help the work progressed much more quickly. At the 3rd point they found old mining tools and more documents. At the 4th they discovered a sealed entrance that seemed to lead to a tunnel. "This here must be the mine entrance," said Nathan, examining the structure. "Probably, but let's leave exploring that for later. First, I need to find all the hiding spots and completely understand what my father left me." At the 5th point, near the old well, they found the biggest surprise yet. A box containing what appeared to be all the official paperwork of the mining company, including government licenses, production reports, and, most importantly, a will from 1980, where the 5 original partners defined that, in the event of any of their deaths, their share in the company would be transferred entirely to their direct descendants. "Nathan, this means I own 20% of a mining company that extracted gold from this region for years." "And the other partners?" "According to this document, besides my father and Stanley's father, there were 3 others, Leonard Davis, Robert Hayes, and Charles Anderson." "I know the Hayes family," said Rachel. "Robert passed away many years ago, but he has children who live in the area." "And the others?" "I don't know Leonard Davis. Charles Anderson. I think he had a family that moved to New York a long time ago." Raymond organized all the documents on the kitchen table. It was too much information to process alone. He needed professional help to fully understand the legal value of it all. "Nathan, do you know any trustworthy lawyers in the area?" "I know one who is very good, Dr. Charles Mitchell. He has an office in the neighboring town and is known for being honest." "Can you introduce me to him?" "I can. But Mr. Raymond, are you sure you want to expose all of this now? If Stanley really is trying to take your land, he might intensify the pressure when he finds out you discovered the documents." It was a valid concern. Raymond needed to think strategically. "You're right. First, let's finish finding all the hiding spots. Then we decide how to proceed." Over the next few days, they found the 3 last points marked on the map. In each one there was more evidence of the hidden wealth of the Turner family. Gold, jewels, money, and most importantly, documents that proved rights to an area much larger than just the current property. On Wednesday, while organizing everything they had found, Raymond received an unexpected visit. It was Catherine, his daughter, who had driven from New York after receiving calls from worried neighbors. "Dad, what's going on here?" she asked, looking at the backyard full of holes. "Catherine, my dear, it's so good to see you. But I wasn't expecting you here." "Dad, Barbara, Mr. Howard's daughter, called me. She said you've been digging up the backyard for months and that the neighbors are worried about your mental health." Raymond sighed. The time had come to trust his daughter. "Catherine, come inside. I need to show you something." He took his daughter to the kitchen, where all the documents and treasures found were organized in several boxes. "My goodness, Dad, where did all this come from?" "It was buried here on the property. Your grandfather hid everything before he left." Raymond told the whole story to Catherine, showing the letters, the maps, and the documents. His daughter listened to everything in a state of shock. "Dad, this is a fortune. Why did Grandpa never say anything about this?" "Apparently because there were people interested in taking everything from the family. And from what I've discovered, those people are still around." "What people?" "Stanley Harper, for starters. His father was your grandfather's partner in the mining. And I suspect he knows much more than he lets on." Catherine examined some documents more closely. "Dad, this needs to be evaluated by a professional. There are documents here that could be worth much more than the gold itself. I know Nathan knows a lawyer he trusts." "Nathan?" "A young man who's been helping me with the excavations, a trustworthy person." At that moment, Nathan and Rachel arrived to continue the day's work. "Catherine, these are Nathan and Rachel, who have been a great help to me." Catherine greeted the two young people and thanked them for the help they were giving her father. "Nathan, my father said you know a competent lawyer." "Yes, I do. Dr. Charles is very well respected in the region. Can you schedule a meeting with him for this week?" "I can try." Nathan called the lawyer's office and managed to schedule a meeting for Friday afternoon. Meanwhile, Catherine helped her father better organize all the documents, separating them by type and date. It was meticulous work, but necessary to present everything clearly to the lawyer. On Thursday, Raymond was in the backyard checking if he had missed any point on the map when he saw Stanley Harper's silver Camry parking in front of the house. This time Stanley wasn't alone. He got out of the car accompanied by an older man, about 60, wearing a dark suit and carrying a briefcase. "Good afternoon, Mr. Raymond," said Stanley, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "This is my lawyer, Dr. Vernon." Raymond felt a chill down his spine. A lawyer. That was not good news. "What can I do for you, gentlemen?" "Well, Mr. Raymond, we have a very interesting proposal for you," said Dr. Vernon. "My client is willing to significantly increase his offer for the land. I've already said I'm not interested in selling. We understand your reluctance, but we need to clarify some legal matters," the lawyer continued. "We have received information that you are conducting unauthorized excavations on the property." "I'm working on my own land." "Yes, but there are municipal regulations that require permits for excavations that exceed a certain depth, and there are also environmental issues to consider." "What kind of environmental issues?" "Irregular excavations can contaminate the region's groundwater. It's a concern of the municipal health department." Raymond realized where the conversation was going. "And what does that have to do with the purchase offer?" "Well, if you sell the property to my client, he will take responsibility for all the costs of regularization and any possible fines. It would be a very convenient solution for you." "And if I don't sell?" "Then you will need to deal with the municipal authorities alone, and that could be very costly and complicated." It was blackmail disguised as a business proposal. "What would the new offer be?" $80,000 cash, Stanley said quickly. "That's still very little." "Mr. Raymond, with all due respect, considering the legal problems you may face, it is a very generous offer," said the lawyer. "I'll think about the proposal." "Of course, but don't take too long. The legal matters could get complicated quickly." After they left, Raymond immediately called Catherine. "Daughter, they're increasing the pressure. They came here with a lawyer threatening problems with City Hall." "Dad, that only confirms they know about the land's real value." "We need to speed up our consultation with Dr. Charles." "Did Nathan manage to move the meeting up?" "I'll call him now." Nathan managed to reschedule the meeting for the next day, Thursday morning. On Friday, Raymond, Catherine, and Nathan headed to Dr. Charles Mitchell's office in the neighboring town. The lawyer was a man in his 50s, with a serious appearance but kind eyes that inspired trust. "Mr. Raymond, Nathan told me a little about your situation over the phone. Can you explain to me in detail what's happening?" Raymond told the whole story, from finding the first letter to the recent pressures from Stanley Harper. He showed all the documents he had found and explained the legal threats he had received. Dr. Charles examined each document carefully, taking notes and asking specific questions. "Mr. Raymond, These documents are extraordinary. If they are authentic, and everything indicates they are, your family has rights over a very valuable area and a mining operation that may still be legally active. How is it still active? According to these partnership contracts, the company was never officially dissolved, and based on the exploration licenses, the mineral rights are still valid. And is that good? It's excellent. It means you are not just the owner of a rural property. You are the majority partner in a mining company with exploratory rights over an area of 20 hectares. Catherine leaned forward in her chair. Dr. Charles, what would the approximate value of all this be? It's difficult to estimate without a complete technical assessment, but considering the current price of gold and the size of the area with mineral rights, we're talking about millions of dollars, possibly tens of millions. Raymond felt his legs go weak. Doctor, what about the threats I received? About city permits and environmental problems? They are intimidations with no legal basis. You are digging on your own property at depths that don't require special permits. And considering you found evidence of historical mining activity, your excavations could be classified as family archaeological research, which is completely legal. And what should we do now? First, we will officially register the discovery of the documents with the competent authorities. Second, we will request a technical assessment of the area. Third, we will begin the process of reactivating the mining company. And fourth, we will file a lawsuit to recover rights to lands that may have been sold improperly. Dr. Charles, is there any risk for my father in this process? Minimal. All the documents appear to be in order. The biggest risk is that other interested parties might try to accelerate processes to complicate the situation. That's why I recommend you act quickly. What kind of other people? Based on the names mentioned in the partnership documents, the descendants of the other partners might try to claim rights, and people who learned of the mine's existence might try to question the legitimacy of your family's rights. Like Stanley Harper? Exactly. If his father really was a partner, he might try to prove he has rights to part of the operation. But the documents prove my father was the majority partner. Yes, but that won't stop others from trying to question it. That's why speed is important. Dr. Charles laid out an action plan for the coming weeks. First, they would register all the documents. Second, they would hire a geologist to assess the area. Third, they would seek information about the other original partners and their descendants. One question, Dr. Charles, said Nathan. What if Stanley Harper tries to increase the pressure on Mr. Raymond? Document everything. Record conversations if possible. Any attempt at coercion or intimidation can be used against him. They left the office with a clear plan and the peace of mind of knowing they were on the right path. On the way back, Catherine talked with her father. Dad, I'm going to stay here for a few more weeks to help with all of this. I've already spoken to the hospital and managed to get some time off. Honey, you don't need to worry about me. Dad, it's not about worry anymore. It's about business. If this is really what it seems, our family's life is going to change completely. Over the weekend, they organized all the findings better and began the process of photographing everything for documentation, as the lawyer advised. Nathan suggested they explore the entrance to the mine they had found a little, just to get a sense of the scale of the operation. But very carefully, warned Catherine. Old tunnels can be dangerous. Nathan, who had experience in construction, improvised some safety equipment and went down into the mine entrance with a powerful flashlight. He came back 15 minutes later with his eyes shining with excitement. Mr. Raymond, this is much bigger than we imagined. There are tunnels that stretch for hundreds of meters, and there's old mining equipment still down there. What kind of equipment? Mine carts, tools, even some sacks that seem to have raw gold inside. Sacks of gold? It looks that way. But we're going to need proper equipment and permits to explore it properly. Raymond could hardly believe what he was hearing. With each discovery, his father's inheritance was proving to be larger and more valuable. On Monday, Dr. Charles called with news. Mr. Raymond, I've registered all the documents and already filed the first applications. And I found something interesting. I discovered records that Stanley Harper already tried to claim mining rights on land near yours, alleging he has documents proving a historical partnership between your father and miners from the region. Can he get those rights? Not with the documents you found. In fact, his documents could be challenged as false, since you have the originals that prove the real partnership. Is that good? It's very good. It means we can not only protect your rights, but also challenge his previous attempts to exploit land that legally belongs to your family. During the following week, many things happened quickly. The geologist, hired by Dr. Charles, visited the property and confirmed the presence of gold in significant quantity. The preliminary report estimated the value of the deposits at a figure that made Raymond need to sit down when he read it. $42 million. It was a fortune that would change not only his life, but the lives of his children and grandchildren. But with the good news also came new pressures. Stanley Harper intensified his visits, now always accompanied by his lawyer, making increasingly higher offers for the land. "Mr. Raymond, my final offer is $150,000, he said on Thursday. It's much more than any land in the region is worth. Stanley, I've already said I'm not interested. Mr. Raymond, don't make this harder than it needs to be, said the lawyer Vernon. We have documents that prove the Harper family's rights over part of this property. We can settle this amicably, or we will have to go to court. It was the first time they mentioned having their own documents. What documents? Proof of partnership between your father and Stanley's father in the gold mining operation in this region. May I see these documents? Of course. The lawyer opened his briefcase and showed some papers. Raymond examined them carefully and then smiled. These documents are copies and incomplete. What do you mean incomplete? The part is missing where it's described that my father was the majority partner with 60% of the partnership. And the clause is missing that automatically transfers the shares of deceased partners to their direct descendants. The lawyer and Stanley exchanged uncomfortable glances. Mr. Raymond, do you have documents that prove this? I have the complete originals. Stanley's expression changed completely. The mask of friendliness fell away, revealing irritation and something that seemed like fear. What originals? The ones my father kept before he left. Documents you probably thought no longer existed. Stanley stood up abruptly. Vernon, let's go. We need to reassess the situation. After they left, Raymond immediately called Dr. Charles. Doctor, they have documents. Incomplete. But they have them. How did they get copies of the original documents? Good question. Someone had access to the originals at some point to make those copies. Mr. Raymond, this could mean there was a previous attempt at theft or forgery. Let's investigate. Dr. Charles discovered that 3 years earlier, there had been a break-in at the town's parish house, where old regional documents were kept. At the time, the police couldn't identify what had been stolen, as most of the documents didn't have a detailed inventory. It's possible that on that occasion they stole copies of your family's documents that were archived at the church. But why would my family's documents be at the church? In the past, it was common for families to give copies of important documents to the church for safekeeping as a form of protection against fires or other accidents. This explained how Stanley gained access to information about the mining company, but only partial information. The following week, Dr. Charles obtained a court order to investigate the authenticity of the documents presented by Stanley. The forensic analysis revealed they were altered copies, where important parts had been removed or modified. Mr. Raymond, this is document forgery. We can file a criminal case against them. Dr. Charles, I prefer to focus on protecting our rights. I don't want unnecessary complications. I understand. But the forgery of the documents greatly strengthens our position to challenge any attempt by them to claim rights to your land. During this period, other interesting developments happened. Nathan, who had become increasingly interested in the mine's history, managed to locate Robert Hayes Jr., son of one of the original partners of the mining company. Robert Jr. was a man in his 60s who lived in a nearby town and worked as a retired engineer. When he learned about the discovery of the documents, he was interested in meeting Raymond. Mr. Raymond, my father always talked about the mine, but we never had access to the documents. After he passed, we tried several times to find out what had happened to the partnership. And now that we know, how would you like to proceed? Well, according to the documents you found, my family is entitled to 15% of the partnership, But I'm not interested in complicating your life. You did all the work of finding the documents and reactivating the company." Robert Jr. was an honest and pragmatic man. He proposed an arrangement where he would receive only 5% of the mining profits, allowing Raymond to maintain majority control. "That's a fair proposal, Robert. I accept. And there's one more thing, Mr. Raymond. My father left me some documents from the mining days. They're not the main contracts, but they are technical reports that might be useful." Robert Jr. brought a box with detailed maps of the mine, production reports, and correspondence between the original partners. Among these documents, they found evidence that the mining had been halted, not due to a lack of gold, but because of political pressures at the time. My father wrote here that some local politicians were demanding very high bribes to keep the exploration licenses active. The partners decided to stop temporarily until the political situation calmed down. But they never reactivated it. Apparently they didn't have time. Your father passed away soon after, and the other partners scattered. This explained why there was still so much gold in the mine. The operation had been halted while it was still profitable. With Robert Jr.'s information and the geologist's technical analysis, Dr. Charles managed to accelerate the legal reactivation process for the mining company. "Mr. Raymond, in 2 weeks we should have all the updated permits and the authorization to resume the mining operation. And what about Stanley Harper?" After the discovery of the document forgeries, he withdrew all his claims. Apparently, he doesn't want to risk facing criminal charges for the falsifications. 3 weeks later, the St. Peter Mining Company was officially reactivated, with Raymond as president and Robert Jr. as vice president. The first month of controlled mining yielded enough to pay off all of Raymond's debts and still leave a significant reserve. But the change in Raymond's life went beyond the financial aspect. The discovery of his father's treasures had brought renewed purpose to his life. He felt connected to his family's history in a way he had never experienced before. Catherine decided to move permanently from New York to help manage the family business. She sold her apartment in the city and built a new house on the family land near the original house. Nathan was hired as the mine's operations supervisor, and Rachel secured a scholarship to continue her studies in education, funded by the family company. "Nathan, you know you changed my life, right?" said Raymond one morning as they watched the work at the mine. "You're the one who changed mine, Mr. Raymond. I never thought I could be part of something like this." "You deserve it, son. Your honesty and loyalty were fundamental to all of this." The reactivated mine brought development to the entire region. Raymond preferentially hired local residents, generating jobs and income for many families. He also created a community fund, allocating a portion of the mining profits to local infrastructure improvements, street paving, school renovations, and expansion of the health clinic. "Mr. Raymond has become the town's benefactor," commented Mrs. Dorothy, who now looked at him with admiration instead of pity. "He was always a good man," Barbara would reply. "He just needed an opportunity to show it." Even Mr. Howard, the neighbor who had expressed concern about Raymond's excavations, now voluntarily helped with the property's security. "Raymond, forgive me for doubting you," he said one day. "You knew what you were doing all along?" "Howard, no need to apologize. I understand your concern. If the roles were reversed, I'd be worried too." 6 months after the discovery of the first box, Raymond was on his porch observing the activity on the property. The house had been renovated. The backyard now had well-kept gardens where there once were holes, and the mine entrance operated with modern equipment and proper safety measures. Catherine approached with a cup of coffee for her father. "What are you thinking about, Dad?" "I'm thinking about your mother. How happy she would be to see all this." "She would be proud of you, Dad. Very proud." "You know what makes me happiest, daughter?" "What?" "It's not the money. It's knowing I managed to honor my father's trust. He left this responsibility to me, and I managed to fulfill it." "And you achieved much more than that, Dad. You transformed a lot of people's lives." It was true. The mine's reactivation had created over 50 direct jobs in the region. The community fund had already financed the construction of a new library and a complete renovation of the local school. Raymond had also created a scholarship program for local youth inspired by Rachel and Nathan, who had shown there was plenty of local talent just needing opportunities. "Dad, a letter arrived for you," said Catherine, bringing an official envelope. It was from the City Hall. Raymond opened it with some apprehension, but the contents surprised him positively. It was an invitation to receive the title of Honorary Citizen of the City in recognition of services rendered to local development. "Look at this, daughter. Who would have thought the old crazy man digging holes in the backyard would be honored by the City Hall? You were never crazy, Dad. You were just a man who knew where he was going." At the award ceremony a week later, Raymond received a standing ovation from an audience that included many of the people who once doubted his sanity. In his speech, he spoke about perseverance, the importance of trusting intuition, and how life's best discoveries are often buried right beneath our feet. "When I started digging, many thought I had lost my mind, and I understand why they thought that. A 68-year-old man digging up the backyard for months really does seem like the act of a crazy man." The audience laughed. "But sometimes in life we need to seem crazy to others in order to do what is right for us. And sometimes what seems like madness is actually wisdom in disguise. My father taught me that true wealth isn't just in the money we save, but in the courage we have to pursue our dreams, even when no one else believes in them. And he also taught that the greatest legacy we can leave our children isn't just material possessions, but values like honesty, perseverance, and the willingness to help others." After the ceremony, many people approached to congratulate Raymond. Among them was Stanley Harper. "Mr. Raymond, I would like to apologize for what happened," he said, genuinely embarrassed. "Stanley, what's past is past. You acted out of desperation, not malice. You are very generous. I know I don't deserve it, but I was wondering if there might be any job opportunity at your company." Raymond looked at the man who had tried to take his land. He saw in him no longer an enemy, but someone who had made mistakes due to financial pressures he himself knew well. "Stanley, I'll think about your request, but first you need to completely resolve the issue of the document forgeries. I'm already taking care of that with my lawyer. We want to repair all the damage caused." 3 months later, Stanley was hired as a sales supervisor for the mining company, using his knowledge of the building supply market to expand the company's business. "Sometimes forgiveness is more transformative than revenge," commented Catherine. "Your grandfather always said that holding a grudge is like carrying stones on your back. It only serves to make us walk slower." 1 year after the discovery of the first letter, Raymond organized a big party on the property to celebrate the anniversary of the mine's reactivation. He invited the entire community, all the employees and their families. During the party, he made a special toast. "I want to thank all the people here today. Some helped me directly. Others taught me important lessons about patience and perseverance. But I want to especially thank 3 people who were fundamental on this journey. Nathan, who helped me when I needed it most, Rachel, who believed in me when few did, and my daughter Catherine, who left her life in the big city to build something new here with me. And I want to make an announcement. We are creating an educational foundation that will offer free technical courses for young people in the region. We want the next generations to have the opportunities we perhaps didn't have." The crowd applauded enthusiastically. Nathan approached the microphone. "Mr. Raymond, can I say something?" "Of course, son. When I met you, I thought I was just helping a nice old man with some holes in his backyard. But in truth, you were teaching me the greatest lesson of my life, that it's worth believing in our dreams, even when they seem impossible. And more importantly, you taught me that true wealth lies in building something that benefits other people, not just ourselves." Rachel also asked to speak. "Mr. Raymond, you changed my perception about age and wisdom. I thought older people were stuck in the past, but you showed me that experience can be the best guide for building the future. And you taught me that sometimes the people who seem to be doing strange things are actually being wiser than those who only do what everyone expects." At the end of the party, when it was already getting dark and most of the guests had left, Raymond stayed alone on the porch looking over the property. The wooden house was now surrounded by well-kept gardens. The mine entrance operated discreetly and efficiently. There was a second house where Catherine lived with her children, who visited her regularly. He thought of Dorothy, imagining how she would react to all the changes. She would certainly be impressed with the transformation, but probably what would make her happiest would be to see how the family came together and how the community benefited. Catherine approached and sat beside her father. "Dad, we achieved much more than Grandpa William could have imagined." "We did, daughter, but do you know what's most impressive?" "What?" "How a simple letter hidden in the attic can change the destiny of so many people. It wasn't just the letter, Dad. It was your courage to believe in it and persist until the end. And it was luck to have good people around me when I needed them." They stayed silent for a few minutes, watching the stars beginning to appear in the sky. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you miss that time when you were digging alone, before all this business and responsibility confusion?" Raymond reflected on the question. "You know, daughter, that time was very important. It taught me that I still had strength and determination I didn't even know I possessed. But I don't miss the loneliness. I prefer 1,000 times to have you all here, building something together, than to be alone with my holes in the backyard. Even knowing you now have much more responsibility? Shared responsibilities are lighter than loneliness, even when it's a loneliness with purpose." The next morning, Raymond woke up early and went for a walk around the grounds, as he did every morning since the excavation routine had ended. He stopped at the spot where he had dug the first hole, 3 months after finding his father's letter. Now there was a small garden there with a plaque that read, "In memory of William Turner, who knew how to safeguard the family's future." Nathan approached, as he did every morning, to discuss the day's activities at the mine. "Good morning, Mr. Raymond. How did you sleep?" "Very well, Nathan. And you?" "Well, too." "Mr. Raymond, can I tell you something?" "Of course." "Yesterday, after the party, I kept thinking about everything that happened this year, and I realized something. You didn't just find a buried treasure." "How so?" "You found a way to transform an individual treasure into community wealth. That is much more valuable than gold." Raymond smiled. "Nathan, you're becoming a philosopher. I'm learning from the master." They walked together toward the mine entrance, where there was already movement of employees preparing for another day of work. "Nathan, do you regret helping me that first day?" "On the contrary, Mr. Raymond. It was the best decision I've ever made in my life. It changed everything for me." "How so?" "Before meeting you, I worked just to survive. Now I work to build something that will last a long time and benefit many people. It's a completely different feeling. And you taught me that age is just a number. What matters is having purpose and the courage to pursue our goals." Raymond felt moved by the young man's words. "Nathan, you know you're like a son to me, right?" "I know, Mr. Raymond, and you're like a second father to me." They arrived at the mine entrance, where Robert Jr. was already talking with the engineers about the day's work. "Good morning, partners," greeted Robert Jr. "Good morning, Robert. How are things today?" "Very well. The geologists found another gold vein yesterday. It looks like we'll have work for many years to come." "And the new equipment?" "It arrives next week. With it, we'll be able to increase production and maintain safety at even better levels." Raymond observed the activity around the mine. 52 people worked there directly, and many others benefited indirectly through local suppliers. What had begun as one lonely man's desperate search had transformed into a prosperous company supporting dozens of families. "Robert, sometimes I still can't believe all this is real." "Well, believe it, Raymond. And the most impressive thing is we're still just beginning. With the expansion we're planning, we could double the number of jobs next year." Catherine arrived with the previous month's financial reports. "Dad, the numbers keep growing. This month we broke records for production and profitability." "And the community fund?" "It grew significantly too. We already have approved resources to build the community center the folks in town were asking for." "Great. And the educational foundation?" "We already have 15 young people enrolled for the technical courses. The demand is higher than we expected." Raymond felt fulfilled seeing how his descendants had embraced the mission of using the wealth found to benefit the community. "Catherine, don't you miss life in New York?" "Sometimes I miss my friends and the hustle and bustle of the big city, but I wouldn't trade the life we've built here for anything." "Why?" Because in New York I was just another nurse in a big hospital. Here I'm part of something that's transforming the life of an entire community. And besides, my children are growing up close to their grandfather and learning values that would be hard to teach in the big city. During the afternoon, Raymond received an unexpected call. It was James, his son, who lived in Houston. "Dad, how's the mining company?" "Going very well, son. Why do you ask?" "Dad, I'm thinking of moving there too." "What do you mean?" "The oil company where I work is going through a restructuring. They're offering voluntary layoffs with good severance packages. And I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happening there." "And what conclusion have you reached?" "That maybe it's time to come home and help the family build something lasting." Raymond was moved by the call. Having both sons close working together on a family project was more than he could have dreamed of a year before. "James, you would be most welcome here. We have plenty of work and many opportunities." "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you happy with everything you've achieved?" The question made Raymond pause to reflect. "You know, son, happiness is a complicated word. I feel accomplishment. I feel purpose. I feel gratitude. And I feel like I've finally understood what my role in life was." "What role?" "To be a link between the family's past and future. Your grandfather planted seeds that I managed to germinate. And now you all will take care to make them grow and benefit many generations." "That's a big responsibility, Dad." "It is, but it's a shared responsibility, and that makes all the difference." A week later, James arrived with his family to visit and decide about the move. His 2 teenage grandchildren were impressed with the property and the entire mining operation. "Grandpa, did you really find all this by digging up the backyard?" asked 15-year-old Emily. "That's exactly how it happened, my granddaughter. But how did you know you were going to find something?" "Truthfully, I didn't know. I just had faith in your great-grandfather's word." "And what if you hadn't found anything?" The question made Raymond think. "You know, Emily, I think even if I hadn't found anything, the process would have been worth it." "Why?" "Because it taught me that I still had the energy and determination to fight for my dreams. And it showed me who the people were that truly cared about me." The youngest grandson, 13-year-old Matthew, was fascinated by the mine. "Grandpa, can I go down into the mine to see what it's like?" "Yes, you can, but only accompanied by Nathan and with all the safety equipment." "Nathan is cool. He explained to me how the whole operation works." "Nathan is a very special person, Matthew. He helped me when I needed it most." "Grandpa, will you teach me how to work at the mining company?" "If that's what you want, I'll teach you everything I know. But first, you need to finish your studies." "I'll study hard so I can help the family." Conversations like these happened frequently. The discovery of the treasure had united the family in a way Raymond had never experienced before. One evening, during dinner with the whole family gathered, Catherine made an observation. "Dad, yesterday I was looking at the photos from when you started digging. You looked so sad and lonely." "That's exactly how I felt, my daughter." "And now?" "Now I feel complete, as if I've finally found my place in the world." James, who had decided to move to the area permanently, commented, "Dad, you turned a loss into a blessing." "How so?" "Mum's passing left you alone and desperate. But it was that loneliness that made you cling to Grandpa's letter with such determination. If Mum were still here, maybe you never would have had the courage to dig up the entire backyard looking for buried treasure." James's observation made sense. Dorothy had always been a practical woman who likely would have discouraged a search that seemed so improbable. "Your son may be right, Dad," agreed Catherine. "Sometimes life puts us in situations that seem terrible, but that actually prepare us for opportunities we couldn't imagine." Nathan, who had been invited to dinner, added, "Mr. Raymond, I can say you taught me that too. When my parents passed away in an accident 2 years ago, I thought my life was over. But that's what made me value the good people who came into my life more. And it made me work with more dedication to build a stable life." Rachel, who was also at the table, concluded, "I think we've all learned that difficulties can be opportunities in disguise. The important thing is not to give up at the first frustration." Raymond looked around the table. His biological family, his adopted family, and friends who had become as close as relatives. It was more wealth than any amount of gold could represent. 2 years after the discovery of the first letter, the St. Peter Mining Company had become one of the most respected companies in the region, not just for its profitability, but mainly for its social responsibility. The Educational Foundation had graduated its first class of technicians, and all the graduates secured well-paying jobs in the area. The community center was up and running, offering activities for all ages, from computer classes for seniors to art workshops for children. The library had tripled its collection and become a reference point for students from several neighboring towns. "Dad, yesterday I got a call from the State University," Catherine shared during a family meeting. "They want to partner with us to create a mining engineering course here in the region." "That would be interesting. That way we'd train our own specialized professionals. And we'd also attract young people from other cities, generating even more development for the region." Gabriel, who was now officially considered part of the family, had an idea. "Mr. Raymond, what if we created a museum telling the story of the treasure discovery and the mine's reactivation?" "A museum?" "Yes. It would be interesting for local tourism and also to preserve the family's and the region's history." "And we could include the history of the other old miners from the region," suggested Robert Jr. "My father left many photos and documents that would be useful." The idea pleased everyone. In 6 months, the St. Peter Mining Museum was operating in a building specifically constructed for it at the entrance to the property. The museum told the story of mining in the region since the 19th century, but especially highlighted the story of Raymond and his search for the treasures left by his father. "It's funny to see my story told in a museum," commented Raymond during the inauguration. "I feel too important." "Dad, your story is important," said Catherine. "It's a lesson about perseverance, faith, and transformation that can inspire many people." The museum quickly became a tourist attraction, receiving visitors from various parts of the state. Many came specifically to learn the story of the man who found a treasure digging in his backyard. During one of these visits, a lady of about 70 years old approached Raymond. "Are you Raymond Turner?" "Yes, ma'am. My name is Helen. I came here because your story reminded me of my own." "How so?" "My husband passed away 3 years ago and left me an old house that I wanted to sell. But I found some old letters from him talking about something valuable hidden on the property." "And what did you do?" "At first I thought it was an old man's fantasy, but after learning your story, I decided to investigate further." "And did you discover anything?" "I discovered that my husband had stored a collection of artworks worth a fortune. Everything was in a secret compartment in the basement of the house. How wonderful. But the most important thing is that it gave me a new purpose in life. I'm using the money to create a senior care home for the needy in my town." Stories like Helen's repeated themselves many times. Raymond's story had inspired many people not to give up on their dreams and to look for opportunities where others saw only difficulties. "Gabriel, do you realize our story is helping other people?" commented Raymond. "I do, Mr. Raymond, and I think that's the true value of what we've achieved. It's not just the gold we found, it's the hope we're spreading." 3 years after the discovery of the first letter, Raymond was celebrating his 71st birthday with a big party at the property. Attending were not only family and friends, but also many employees of the mining company, beneficiaries of the foundation's social programs, and visitors who had learned his story through the museum. During the party, the city mayor made a special speech. "Mr. Raymond, on behalf of the entire community, we want to thank you for everything you've done for our region. When you started digging in your backyard 3 years ago, many thought you were losing your mind, but you were actually finding a way to transform our city. Today we have more jobs, better education, more opportunities for our young people, and an example of how perseverance can change destinies. For this reason, we want to announce that the street where your property is located will be renamed William Turner Street, in honor of your father, who planted the seeds of all this transformation." Raymond was moved by the tribute. "Mayor, my family and I are deeply honored, but I want to make it clear that none of this would have been possible without the support of the entire community. When I started digging, Many people were worried about me, even though they thought I was acting strangely. That genuine concern was crucial to keep me from giving up, and later, when I discovered the treasures, many people helped me turn individual wealth into a collective benefit. That shows the special character of this community. After the official speeches, the celebration continued with music and dancing. Raymond observed the people enjoying themselves on his property and remembered how it all began. 3 years earlier, he was a lonely, indebted man, digging holes in desperation. Now he was the center of a network of relationships that included family, friends, employees, and an entire community that benefited from his success. "What are you thinking about, Grandpa?" asked Emily, who was now 18 and had started her business administration degree at the local college. "I'm thinking about how life can change quickly when we have the courage to believe in our dreams." "You never doubted?" "I doubted many times, my granddaughter. There were nights I almost gave up. But whenever I was about to stop, I remembered my father's words in the letter. 'Don't let anyone know.'" "What do you mean?" "He knew there would be people who would try to stop me from finding the treasure. So he warned me to be discreet and persistent." "And you were." "I was. And I learned that sometimes we need to ignore the opinions of others to do what is right for us." Matthew, now 16 and fascinated by mining engineering, joined the conversation. "Grandpa, do you plan to expand the mining company more?" "We plan to expand, but sustainably. We always want to consider the environmental impact and the benefit to the community." "And will you teach me how to work in the company?" "I will teach you everything I know, Matthew. But first you need to study hard to understand not just how to extract gold, but how to do it responsibly." "I will study, Grandpa. I want to continue the family's work." Conversations like this repeated throughout the celebration. The family's third generation was growing up with the awareness that they had inherited not just material wealth, but also social responsibility. Nathan approached Raymond during the party. "Mr. Raymond, may I make an announcement?" "Of course, son." Nathan took the microphone and got everyone's attention. "Everyone, I want to take advantage of this celebration to share some news. Rachel and I are getting married next month." The crowd applauded enthusiastically. Raymond was moved to see that the couple who met during his excavations had fallen in love. "And we want to ask for Mr. Raymond's blessing, as he was the one who brought us together," Nathan continued. Raymond stood up and hugged the young couple. "You have my blessing and my gratitude. You are like children to me." Rachel, now a graduate in education and coordinator of the Foundation's educational programs, was visibly emotional. "Mr. Raymond, when I met you digging in the backyard, I never imagined it would be the start of a new family for me. Family is chosen by the heart, my daughter, and you have always been part of our family." The party continued late into the night. When everyone had finally left, Raymond stayed on the porch looking at the property in the moonlight. Catherine approached and sat beside her father. "Dad, how does it feel to be the patriarch of all this?" "I feel grateful, daughter. Very grateful." "Grateful for what?" "For having had the courage to believe in my father's letter. For having found people like Nathan and Rachel. For having you by my side. For being able to see our family grow and prosper. And especially for being able to use our fortune to help other people. Dad, can I confess something?" "Of course." "When I arrived here 3 years ago and saw you digging, I really thought I was losing my mind." "I understand. It was a very strange situation indeed. But now I understand that you were actually showing a wisdom I couldn't comprehend at the time." "What wisdom?" "The wisdom of knowing that sometimes we need to seem crazy to others in order to do what's right for us." Raymond smiled upon hearing his own words repeated by his daughter. "And what lesson do you take from all this, Catherine?" "That we shouldn't dismiss older people's dreams as fantasies. Sometimes they know things that we, the younger ones, can't understand. And that life experience can be the best guide for making decisions that seem impossible." They stayed silent for a few minutes, watching the stars. "Dad, do you feel you fulfilled the mission Grandpa William left you?" "I feel I have fulfilled it and gone beyond. He wanted me to protect the family from debt. I achieved that, and we even created a company that will support our family for generations. But mainly, We managed to turn an individual inheritance into a benefit for an entire community. And that, daughter, is more valuable than any amount of gold. The next morning, like every morning for the past 3 years, Raymond woke up early and went for a walk around the property. He stopped at the garden that had been planted on the site of the first hole he dug. The plaque in honor of his father was surrounded by colorful flowers that Catherine tenderly cared for. "Thank you, Father," he said softly to the plaque, "for trusting me and for leaving me a legacy that changed not only our family, but an entire community." Nathan approached as he did every morning to discuss the day's work. "Good morning, Mr. Raymond. Did you sleep well after the party?" "Very well, Nathan. And you all?" "We did too. Rachel is radiant with the wedding preparations. How is the planning going?" "Going well. We want a simple but meaningful ceremony, and we would be honored if you would be our best man." Raymond was moved by the invitation. "It would be an honor, my son." They walked together toward the mine where another day of productive work awaited them. "Nathan, have you ever stopped to think about how our lives have changed since that first day when you helped me dig?" "I think about it every day, Mr. Raymond, and I always come to the same conclusion." "What conclusion?" "That it was the best day of my life. The day I met a person who taught me it's worth believing in impossible dreams, and who gave me a family and a purpose I never imagined I could have." Raymond put his hand on the young man's shoulder. "Nathan, you know all this was only possible because you had the courage to help an old man who seemed to be going crazy, right?" "I know. But I also know that you had the courage to trust me when you barely knew me. And most of all, you had the courage to pursue your dreams when everyone doubted." They arrived at the mine entrance, where Robert Jr. was already organizing the day's activities. "Good morning, partners," greeted Robert Jr. "Good morning, Robert. How are things today?" "Excellent. The geologists confirmed we still have material for at least another 20 years of sustainable extraction." "And what does that mean?" "That our company can continue generating jobs and benefits for the community for a long time to come." Raymond observed the activity around the mine. Employees arriving for another day of work, modern equipment running efficiently, a safe and productive work environment. It was hard to believe all that had been born from a lonely man digging holes in the backyard with an old shovel. "Robert, can I confess something?" "Of course, Raymond." "Sometimes I still wake up thinking all this is a dream." "Well, it's not, my friend. It's the result of your courage and our determination to do the right things." During the day, Raymond received several calls from people interested in learning his story. Journalists, students, business people who wanted to learn from his experience. One of the calls was particularly interesting. It was a documentary filmmaker from New York who wanted to make a film about his story. "Mr. Raymond, your story has all the elements of a great film: suspense, perseverance, twists and turns, and most importantly, a positive message about never giving up on your dreams. And what would this film be like?" We would like to tell it from the beginning. Your life before the discovery of the letter, the first days digging alone, the pressure from the neighbors and from Stanley Harper, the help from Nathan and Rachel, all the way to the current transformation." "And what would be the goal?" "To inspire other people to believe in their dreams and to use their achievements to benefit their communities." Raymond discussed the proposal with the family. Everyone agreed it would be a good way to spread the message of hope and perseverance. "But on one condition," Raymond told the filmmaker. "Part of the film's profits must go to our educational foundation." Agreed. In fact, that makes the story even more inspiring. 6 months later, filming for the documentary began. The crew spent 3 weeks on the property, interviewing Raymond, the family, Nathan, Rachel, Robert Jr., and many community members. "It's moving to see our story being told to the world," commented Catherine during one of the filming sessions. "I hope it can truly inspire other people," replied Raymond. During the interviews, many interesting reflections came up. One of them was when the director asked Raymond about the most difficult moment of the entire journey. "It was when the social worker came to question my mental sanity. In that moment, I felt completely alone and misunderstood." "And what was the most rewarding moment?" "It was when I realized that our discovery could benefit not just my family, but the entire community," That was the moment I understood we had found something much bigger than gold. Nathan also gave moving testimony. What impresses me most about Mr. Raymond isn't that he found a treasure. It's that he knew how to transform that treasure into a benefit for so many people. He could have just gotten rich and that's it. But he chose to use the wealth to build something lasting that would benefit the whole region. Rachel spoke about how the experience changed her perception of age and wisdom. I learned that we shouldn't underestimate older people. They have a life experience that can be very valuable if we know how to listen and learn. And I learned that sometimes the people who seem to be doing strange things are actually being wiser than everyone else. The documentary was released a year later and became a national success. Raymond's story inspired thousands of people not to give up on their dreams and to look for ways to use their achievements to benefit others. As a result of the film's impact, the St. Peter Mining Company received several partnership and investment proposals, but Raymond and the family were careful to choose only partnerships that aligned with their values of social responsibility and sustainability. "Dad, they offered a lot of money to expand the operation quickly," Catherine reported, "but it would be at the cost of the environment and working conditions. And what did you say? That we prefer to grow slowly and responsibly. Our goal was never to get rich quickly, but to build something lasting and beneficial." "Very good, daughter. That's exactly how it should be." 5 years after the discovery of the first letter, Raymond was celebrating his 73rd birthday. The party was smaller than the previous years, more intimate, with only close family and special friends. During the party, he took stock of everything that had happened. "When I found my father's letter 5 years ago, I was a lonely, indebted man with no prospects. Today I am surrounded by family, friends, and purpose. When I started digging, people thought I was going crazy. Today our story is told as an example of perseverance and transformation. When I found the first treasure, I could have solved only my personal problems. Today our discovery benefits hundreds of families. All of this taught me that life can change completely when we have the courage to believe in our dreams and the wisdom to use our achievements for the benefit of others." Nathan, now married to Rachel and father of a 2-year-old girl, made a special toast. "Mr. Raymond, I want to thank you for teaching me that true wealth isn't in what we gain, but in what we build for the next generations. Our daughter is growing up in a better world because of what you built here, and that is more valuable than any treasure." Rachel added, "And I want to thank you for teaching me that we shouldn't judge people by their dreams, no matter how impossible they seem. Sometimes the impossible dreams are the only ones worth pursuing." James, who had moved permanently to the region and become the operational director of the mining company, spoke on behalf of his children. "Dad, my children are growing up with values that were only possible to teach because of the example you set. They learned that hard work, perseverance, and generosity are life's true treasures." Catherine, moved, made the last toast of the night. "Dad, when I came here 5 years ago to convince you to stop digging, I thought I was protecting you from a destructive obsession. Today, I understand that you were actually protecting me from the mediocrity of a life without dreams. You taught me that it's worth fighting for our goals, even when no one else believes in them." Raymond was moved by his family's testimonials. "Thank you for everything you represent in my life. Thank you for believing in me when I didn't even fully believe in myself. And thank you for helping me transform an individual discovery into a collective benefit." After the party, Raymond and Catherine stayed talking on the porch. "Dad, do you have any regrets about these 5 years?" Raymond thought carefully before answering. "I have only one regret." "Which one?" "That I didn't find my father's letter sooner. Imagine how many years I could have enjoyed this life full of purpose and relationships. But perhaps it wasn't the right time before? How so? Perhaps you needed to go through loneliness and despair to fully appreciate what you achieved afterward. And perhaps you needed the maturity of 68 years to have the wisdom to transform individual wealth into collective benefit." Catherine's reflection made sense. Perhaps everything had happened at the exact moment it was supposed to. "You may be right, daughter. Perhaps if I had found all this when I was younger, I would have used it selfishly. Life experience taught me the value of sharing blessings with others. 6 months later, Raymond received a call that moved him deeply. It was from Helen, the lady who had visited the museum 3 years earlier and been inspired by his story to search for treasures left by her husband. "Mr. Raymond, do you remember me? I'm Helen, who learned your story at the museum." "Of course I remember, Helen. How are you?" "Very well. I'm calling to share news about the senior care home I created." "How is it going?" "Wonderfully. We've already cared for over 100 needy seniors and have a waiting list. But most of all, I want to share that our story inspired other people." "How so?" "After our story was in the local newspaper, we were contacted by several families who found forgotten treasures on their properties and decided to use them for social projects." "How wonderful! It's as if your story created a wave of solidarity, people rediscovering hidden values in their families and using them to benefit their communities." The call left Raymond deeply moved. His story was inspiring others, not just to search for material treasures, but mainly to find ways to use their discoveries to benefit others. "Nathan, did you hear what Helen shared?" said Raymond, sharing the news. "I did, Mr. Raymond. It's incredible how one good deed can multiply and inspire so many others. Now I understand why my father hid all those treasures. It wasn't just to protect our family, but to create an opportunity to transform lives, and you knew how to seize that opportunity in the best possible way." That night, Raymond wrote a letter to his grandchildren, inspired by the letter his father had left for him. "My dear grandchildren, Emily and Matthew, when you read this letter, I probably will no longer be here. But I want to leave some lessons I have learned in these last years. The first lesson is that it's never too late to start over. When I found my father's letter at 68 years old, I thought I was too old for big changes. But I discovered that age can be an advantage when we have the wisdom to make good decisions. The second lesson is that it's worth believing in our dreams, even when everyone doubts. People will always have opinions about our choices, but only we know what we truly feel in our hearts. The third lesson is that true wealth is not in what we accumulate, but in what we build to benefit others. The gold we found was important, but what truly changed our lives was the decision to use that wealth to help our community. The fourth lesson is that family is chosen by the heart. Nathan and Rachel are not our blood, but they are our family. Choose well the people you want by your side. The fifth and most important lesson is that each of us has hidden treasures within: courage, generosity, wisdom, love. These are the true treasures we can leave for future generations. Take good care of our company, but mainly take good care of our mission, to use our resources to make the world a better place. With love and hope, your grandfather, Raymond. End of story. And now, dear listeners, we have reached the end of this moving story that shows us how perseverance and faith can completely transform our lives. What did you think of Mr. Raymond's journey? Do you believe he made the right decisions in using his discovery to benefit the entire community? Share your impressions with us in the comments, and don't forget, sometimes the most valuable treasures are right under our feet, waiting only for us to have the courage to look for them.